Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the latest episode of My Adventures with Superman. It was called Two Lanes Diverged. And as it starts, General Lane has called a house meeting at Clark and Jimmy's apartment because he thinks that Amanda Waller has found him, and he indeed gets a text message indicating that this is the case. Jimmy gets invited to Star Labs to attend a symposium as a keynote speaker on the topic of alien life, much to his delight. Clark again tells Lois via voice message that he needs to talk to her so that they can discuss the situation with Supergirl. Lois, meanwhile, goes looking for her dad at Jimmy and Clark's apartment but doesn't find him there. And then we get a flashback of her as a child seemingly training in the woods with her dad. Jimmy is very well treated upon his arrival at the symposium, and Clark, who attended with him, seems to take joy in that. General Lane, meanwhile, accesses some kind of bunker behind a fake wall where he finds Lois before they're both attacked by some kind of giant dude with robotic arms that they run from. Jimmy learns that what he's actually been asked to speak about is something being called the Superman problem alongside Lex Luthor. Lois and her dad wind up under the city in a section of tunnels, and we get another flashback to when Lois was still a kid, but older, at some point after her mom died, and her dad was training her to find the North Star. And they argue about how Lois is finding it difficult to have a normal life since they're always moving because of her dad's career. And in the present, her dad tells her that he would have done things differently just before they're attacked by a Ghost Rider type dude. Lex and Jimmy basically debate the efficacy of Superman, with Lex making the case that Superman is dangerous because he could turn on humanity at any time, and coming off a lot like J. Jonah Jameson in The Process. Lois and her dad come out of the tunnels at the location of a pawn shop where the general gives over some alien tech to the proprietor, who is an old friend of his and a robotics expert, the one who sent him the text warning him that he'd been made in exchange for making him a fake passport. Lois and the general then argue again about the fact that he's always leaving, which he says he's only doing to keep a bullseye off of Lois. It turns out that the general's friend had been compromised by Amanda's people and that he had lured him there so that Amanda's people could capture him, which leads to a crazy fight between them and Amanda's people, to which Superman arrives in short order. After the fight, which created a little bit of destruction, Lex uses the example of the chaos that had just happened to his advantage to make Superman look bad in front of a crowd, which seems to turn on Superman, before Lex thanks Jimmy for the advice that he gave Lex back in the first episode, which makes Superman seem to question Jimmy's loyalty. Lois takes her dad to her apartment to stay, and when he says it's better than staying with Clark and then goes off on how Clark's different, Clark overhears him from outside, and when Lois acknowledges that Clark is different, Clark overhears that as well, but he leaves before he can hear her say the rest of her thought, which was that that's what she loves about Clark. Lois returns Clark's call from earlier, saying that she can't meet with him because of stuff having come up with her dad, at which point Superman finally tries to contact Kara using the device from a couple of episodes ago. We then get another flashback to yet another training exercise that the general put Lois through when she was yet older, which involves him leaving her in a tent in the woods by herself to see if she could find him. And when she does and realizes what he did, she vows to make it without him, just like he seems to want her to be able to do. Before the episode ends, representatives from Star Labs, the Pentagon, and other entities pledge their cooperation with Lex and Amanda to confront the so-called threat of Superman. And we see that the alien entity that was foreshadowed to be a potential threat at the end of the first episode is now hovering over the Earth, looking down on it. So once again, I found this episode to be okay. I don't think this show is any great shakes, but I do enjoy watching it. The animation is great. Jimmy is very funny. And I like this version of Clark Superman. It harkens back to the Superman I grew up with, from 1978, and the one from the 50s TV show that was on TV when I was a kid in reruns. And I really like how they depict the Lois character on the show. The fight sequences are pretty good, and, I'm liking what they're doing with their version of Lex Luthor so far, so I'm interested to see where that goes. And, once again, the show does a good job of exploring the friendships between Clark and Jimmy and Lois, and the relationship between Lois and Clark. And so I think it's doing a good job of portraying that whole dynamic. So I'm finding it enjoyable, and I'm very much looking forward to Supergirl. So I'm glad they're kind of moving that plot along. I just hope they get to it next episode because I really want to see Supergirl. But that's really it. I don't have a lot to say. It's a decent show, and I look forward to it every week. I'm going to get out of here for now. I will be back with a breakdown and review of next week's episode once it airs. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.